YouTube saying, "Are you sure you want to start streaming live?" Yes. All right, welcome to our second community deep dive. I am Chloe Elliott. I have the pleasure of managing the user community for Jama software, and I'm here today with Senior Product Manager Jason Brown.
Hello, everybody.
Jason wears many hats as our integration product manager. One of the many projects that he has been improving has been the communications within the developers portal, and this process is what birthed the API Cookbook. Isn't that right?
That's correct. We saw that there was a lot of feedback in the community that there was more information needed, and internally we also found that there was just some complex questions that weren't properly being answered, and that's where this spawned from.
Excellent. We're really lucky to have Jason at the helm. I wish we had time to talk about everything him and our team is doing at Jama, but this is only supposed to be about 25-ish minutes, so this is the agenda for this community deep dive. So first we're going to do an overall overview on the developers portal, its purpose, contents, sunset policy, go over breaking changes, and the change log. Did I miss anything?
No, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Jason is then going to introduce the API Cookbook. Just side note, what I love about this being a topic for our community deep dive is the fact that our product team sourced a lot of these use cases, not just from internal Jama conversations, but from topics and questions and solutions that we see frequently right in the community. And just so you know, Jason is my go-to brainstorming person when you ask REST API questions in the community. Okay, and next we're going to actually go over an example from the cookbook, show you from start to finish, and the subject we're using is abstract search and Lucene, and that link is in this landing page in the community, so you can go and take a look at that directly in the cookbook. I want to say feel free to ask questions during this community deep dive on the landing page in the form of a comment anytime during this presentation, because at the end we will look over and see if there's any questions and answer what we can. As always, this page will stay open. I will be monitoring it, and so if you have any questions after the fact, this video will stay up, and I will continue to monitor it and try to answer those questions when I can. Okay, so that's all the housekeeping. Jason, let's talk about the developers portal.
Great. Give me just a moment to change screens. There's going to be a slight blackout for a moment. All right. So this will be... My mouse is not working properly. There we go.
There we go.
Technical difficulties. It's 7 o'clock in the morning in Portland time.
It is.
So thanks everybody for your patience. So we're going to start by just taking a quick look at the development portal. So it's easily accessible by going to dev.jamasoftware.com. The information here is, we're trying to keep it organized, but give us a moment if there's some information that needs to be adjusted or stuff. We're always taking feedback. So we broke it into several sections with getting started. We have a section for REST API documentation, the cookbook, some code examples available through our GitHub repository, and, as always, links to the community and support group, because we want to make sure you have access to that at your fingertips.
And just so you know, there's also a link to this area, the developers area, in the user community under education and REST API.
Oh, perfect. So we'll step right into getting started. So this getting started guide is an area that's existed for a little while. We've done some refreshing on it and some adjustment and added entirely new sections to it. So I wanted to make sure to call that out. If you've been here before, it may behoove you to go back into here once or twice over the next few months. Especially if you're adding feedback through the community about things that should be added or adjusted, corrected, or have ideas on things that could help other community users. So we start here simply at the top by having an overview about availability, how to get access to Jama. There's a section here for using Swagger. There's a section here specifically for authentication. So, for example, if you are wanting to utilize an API token rather than basic authentication with your username and password, so it'd be something if you're running a script or what have you. There's details here for people who have interest in that. More importantly, from my perspective, and the topic today is that down here under API policies, we're starting to carry new information that did not previously exist or was less frequently updated.
Versioning. We have some updates on that, right, Jason?
Yes. So versioning is it's important. We've got a little bit of history here. We call out V1, for example, which is no longer available as of 8.22 version. We also have the V1 endpoint called out, latest endpoint, and the labs endpoint. For people who are familiar with it, the labs endpoint is an area that Jama will go and add in functions that are they're still in testing. They are production candidates, but have not yet officially made it into the tool, or may never make it into the tool. And this is something that's available to people as they see fit. There is no warranty on the information that's there. Very similar to Google Labs or other lab systems that you may have used in the past. We also have latest, which is just a clone of the V1 tool. Latest is under consideration for removal because there's some risk associated with people who are utilizing it as we move into V2, V3, etc. And then we have V1, which is the current stable available to everybody. We've also added a section here for our sunset policy. This policy has existed before, and it's been followed, but we haven't really had a use for it yet because we're still new into the REST API universe. We've been utilizing REST for several years now, but all of our changes have been non-breaking changes. So non-breaking changes meaning that they're additive. We're able to add them to the service without causing any change in default behavior or modification of what you would expect from the service from yesterday versus today.
But now you're here, so we're going to have version 2, version 3, version 4. So using versioning in your code is probably best practice right now.
Exactly. We're really leaning that direction. V2 is under development right now and review. And so we should see some changes here in the next 12 months, I'd say. Ish is important. But the reality is that we will have to sunset V1 at some point, or other tools or sections of the service. So we've actually put a written statement of what that intent is in here, talking about how long that period would be, when we would stop applying changes to the old version and only apply those changes to the new version, etc. So if you have interest in seeing what that looks like, check it out here. We've also added a new function to the actual API itself, where when you call to the service and you receive back information, if something is in a sunset path, the header will disclose a date to you specifically, and there'll be some information put out to the community about that in the near future. So next on the list is breaking change definition. This is just a very simple definition of what a breaking change is. This was harvested from a lot of different resources on the internet because we're all following the same basic practice. So there's no real difference in our definition versus definitions that you might have run into with other vendors. Effectively, it's any kind of a change that is removal or a deletion of a method or resource name. The addition of required parameters. If we're adding something to the API that you must make a modification to your tool usage in order to be able to place the same call you placed yesterday, that would be a breaking change. So we try to avoid these things where possible. We also have some definitions down here of like a limited break perspective where the service was returning an error 500, for example, and that's just bad behavior. And so we've corrected the bad behavior and now it resolves to a different HTTP response code. That wouldn't necessarily be a breaking change from our perspective, but if you code it around the flaw, it could impact you. So. We've also added a section in here for API changelog. This existed previously, but it wasn't well maintained. It's being properly maintained at this point, and we're going to be adding even more information to it as we go. But the goal here is that we add information as each release occurs, giving you an actual change log of important modifications. A good example, if we go down here, is in version 8.38, where we actually merged several endpoints from the labs endpoint into version 1 sustain. They had proven themselves out as being viable and stable endpoints, and now we're starting to discuss the sunset process of removing them out of labs and making them no longer available there as they're in production. Other modifications that are called out, as we can go up here and look at like version 8.40. We'll look at 8.41, where we made a modification for on-premise users, allowing Swagger to function properly from behind a reverse proxy. So these are important changes that you would otherwise not necessarily be aware of, and we want to make sure that's properly disclosed. And kind of a few more information points over here about our legacy SOAP system for people who are on very old versions and need to have assistance in migrating.
There's the timeline there.
Yep. And then we have a common response codes that are currently coming from the service. So if we don't have any questions from this perspective, we can take a look at the actual cookbook, right? So one thing that has become clear through a lot of conversations is that people aren't necessarily sure about how to get to Swagger. And we're going to spend some time proving this out inside Swagger. So I want to make sure to just take a moment and show that.
I get a lot of questions about that on the community.
Great.
How exactly do we get there?
So we're going to be using both examples in production as well as in a test environment that's not publicly accessible. So we'll just start here. This is a test account that the product team uses for purposes. So if you're inside of any version of Jama, after the .com, after the .net, after whatever you have in your local environment, it doesn't make any difference what it is. Simply delete everything else that's there. Type in lowercase letters API/DLCS. It is plural. And this should load you up to a version of Swagger. Swagger is an industry, it's very much industry standard. There's other alternatives out there, but it's one that Jama selected for creating documentation on the fly and actually reading information directly from the service to ensure that it's up to date always. The information that's in here is very straightforward, but you can see here that latest, for example, is the default for now. We could very simply change this to .v1.
And you recommend that because as we have version 2 or version 3 or whatnot, and you don't know those changes have happened, it could break.
Correct. Yeah, we're going to have a C change on this. Exactly. Where V1 is going to become the default here. We're going to be actively communicating to the community about the very simple migration effort to change latest to V1 through scripted responses, etc., and get people into a safe place. So, not that latest is unsafe, but when we make a V2, it's going to make your life a lot more complex if you're still using latest. So, so V1, same thing for labs. So you can come in here and type in labs and gives you access to information. Again, some of these things have already been migrated over into the V1 service. These test run information is still in a test status. We have a T-bot, which is fantastic.
There's no versioning for labs, right?
That's correct.
It's kind of like Wild West in there.
Exactly. We have no warranty on it. We have no guarantees that it's going to be functioning. It really is a labs area where we're testing something out and we're allowing other people to test it if they feel they would like to as well. And we'll just go ahead and exit out of here then. So that's how you get into Swagger. So again, API-docs with an S, and everything else is very straightforward. So we're going to go into a test area that we have now. This is using the latest version of Jama.
Upcoming version.
Yes, technically this is the version that'll be coming out on this weekend.
Sneak peek.
Yeah, sorry, all the on-premise self-hosted folks, you won't see any of the improvements or changes until spring, but we love you anyway, so
We do.
it's just the deployment model, I guess. So we have added several elements in here for cookbook purposes. I'm going to click over the cookbook now, and we can put the stuff into parity. So on the development portal, you can go to API Cookbook in the top right. It's also available at the bottom of this list. Inside this cookbook, we're going to cover a number of different topics. So this is a little bit scatterbrained. Again, sorry for the early morning organization. But we have a number of different items in here. This is about 6 months old, maybe 5 months old, and it's been organically crafted. There's going to be typos. There's going to be changes in grammar that are necessary. It is far from perfect.
And we definitely want you to look at this and let us know. You can ping me via the community. Let us know, like, hey, there's a typo here, or this code isn't quite right, or
Exactly.
this didn't work. And I would have direct access to JSON, and we can make those changes quite quickly.
Yeah, same with when you have suggestions. We actually will take suggestions from the community. The information that's in here has come both from tickets in the community that we've read that we said, yeah, that makes sense that we would need more information there. And we're too close to the project or the product to see the whole documentation. Or from our own development team when they've said, this is super complex, let's put some more information out there. So again, this is a living document. We'll talk a little bit later about how to add stuff to the community that you want to have added. So we have sample information, parameterization, how to use the patch endpoint. As we get more elements inside this cookbook, we will start to organize it better. So we'll have sections for test, we'll have sections for items, abstract calls, etc. So we have information about throttling currently. We have efficiency information for syncing data in and out. What we're going to focus on today is going to be this section here, abstract search, Lucene parameters, functions, and limitations.
And I think one of the reasons we chose this one, Jason, was because this one was inspired by some work we were doing in the community with people.
That's correct. It's a very simpatico situation. I was personally running into questions about this at the exact same moment that somebody in the community was asking questions that were similar. So the creation of this cookbook item not only assists people who are having problems out there, but it personally assisted me in the process of my day-to-day, putting a strong definition around this and ensuring that there was a place where I could go for information if I got confused later on. So Jama utilizes a version of Lucene search, which comes from Apache, for helping it drill down into abstract items. It's important to recognize that there's a number of viable parameters that Lucene search is able to utilize, but it has difficulty going down to an exact match because it's not designed to. It's actually designed to give back more results and be a little bit looser in case you don't know the exact parameter you're looking for. You're looking for close estimates so that you can identify information that might be lost. Lucene is incredibly common. It's used very heavily across many different industries, so we're not the only people utilizing it, but we're always looking for ways that we might be able to improve it or replace it in the future. But I wanted to call that out specifically, that we can't guarantee an exact match without using specific parameters, and we can talk a little bit about that as we go through the examples.
So when you're using the abstract endpoint with Lucene parameters, you're casting a very wide net.
Exactly. You're trying to get back information from a large subset of details. And if you're looking for something very specific, we can definitely get that information to you. But it's not as easy as just searching for one term, and it's not designed to be. So what we've done is we've actually created a small project, which you saw earlier when I clicked on the wrong screen for too long. We've actually created a small project that just has 5 items inside of it. We've done item 1 is alpha. We have alpha beta, beta alpha, beta, and then we have a 5th one, which just has a different text for the name, but includes the word alphabet as part of the actual item, so it's not in the same location.
Tricky.
Yep. So what we're going to start with is just no parameter. We're going to, using Swagger, call to this project, get back all elements that contain the word alpha, and we expect the results that we have listed here.
Okay.
So here's our test cases. Here's alpha. What we're going to do is grab project ID, which in this case is 4470. And we'll go into abstract items. Oh, here's something, just a sidebar, that we recently added to Swagger. It's an element where when the tool itself knows that a specific endpoint is going to be in a sunset mode, that we'll actually disclose it as part of Swagger. So you'll see it in your face just a little bit more. Yep. Okay, so let's put in a project ID. And we're going to go down here to contains. I have a little bit of information from my testing already typed in here, so my apologies. And let's execute this.
Did we get the results we wanted?
So we got back a result set of total 3 results. And the results that, results we're expecting was 3 results. It's finding items 1, 2, and 3. The result is limited to instances where there's an exact representation of the word alpha. And that's based off of the fact that Lucene is expecting the word alpha with no delimiters or changes or modifications. So it is identifying and finding both alpha, alpha beta, and beta alpha. But you'll notice that neither of these are there.
Right.
Okay. So let's change this up a little bit, and we're going to try putting in double quotes.
Okay.
So double quotes on alpha, we're expecting to return 4 results because it is, and then with alpha beta, we're expecting to see 5 results, and we'll cover that in just a moment. Okay, so we'll put it inside of double quotes. So we had 3 results before, as we can see down here. Hopefully everybody out there can see my mouse because I'm just running circles on things, expecting that people can see it. And we get back a result count of 4.
Okay.
So
just for people who don't know, putting the double quotes tells Lucene what exactly?
So what the putting the double quotes around is actually telling Lucene kind of the opposite of what you'd expect from normal search systems. Putting the double quotes around is actually telling Lucene that it's allowed to use wildcards.
On either side.
On either side, exactly. So it's searching for and is now finding both alpha, alpha beta, beta alpha, and it's finding this one here, which includes the word alphabet inside the description.
Okay.
So I'm going to scroll down and just show that really quickly because then we don't have to show it later. So here is the first example, which is alpha. Here's our second example, which is alpha beta.
In the name.
In the name. Third example, which is beta alpha. And here's a fourth or fifth example, which includes the word alphabet.
Okay.
So it's a little bit strange because if you're expecting it to work like a Windows system or something else, putting something, or even Google, putting something in double quotes means this is exactly what I'm searching for. But with Lucene, that's not the way that it works. Okay. So the difference here is that if we put in alpha beta with a space, we should actually get back every single response. Okay, so let's execute this. And we get back 5 for 5.
Yeah.
The reason here is that by putting in both alpha and putting in both beta, it's wildcarding off of both of those terms, and we have both those terms spread across all 5 of our examples.
We do. Okay.
Yes, we do.
We do.
We do. All right. So let's try something a little bit more complex here.
Okay.
So single quotes. I'm not going to show this. It works the same as no parameter. Double quotes and wildcards is interesting. You can actually replace the letter L in alpha, and if you slap an asterisk in there instead, it will search for any word that has a plus any character at all plus PHA. You can add a specific field. So this is an area that you're able to really add qualifiers. So by putting alpha in quotes before, in double quotes before, we got back the description field with the word alphabet. So this is where you can start to add some finesse to it and really nail it down. So you're not getting back results that you're not expecting. So by putting in a field qualifier, we're telling it name, colon, and then alpha. And we wanted to locate anything that's got the alpha in it, whether it be the word alphabet or what have you. But in this scenario, what we're expecting is just three results back. And we have that. And if I go down here, I'll just look. Yep. So we have the first example, which was alpha. We have the second result, which was alpha beta. And we have the third example, which was beta alpha. And at this point, we do not have the fifth example, which included alphabet, which is great. It means that the search parameter specifically only looked in the name field, making it much more granular.
So you put emphasis on the colon before name colon. Is that important for?
Yes. Okay. Yep. You have to have the colon in there to advise it that you're looking for field information. Exactly. So all right, so let me go back to our examples and just see if there's other things here that we could really talk about. So this is where we start to get really heavy-handed. I'm not going to spend too much time here. I want to make sure that we have some time for questions here at the end, and I know that we're running short. But you're able to add even more qualifiers like plus and minus signs. So you can add plus alpha space beta, and this is going to search for and find anything that has alpha included, including the word alphabet and the word beta. You could do alpha plus beta, and it's going to search it slightly different. It's going to put emphasis on beta. And if it doesn't have the word beta, it's not going to be included. So alphabet is excluded because beta is not in alphabet. You can tell it to exclude anything that has beta. These plus or minus parameters are very much just like Google. Search for what I'm looking for and guarantee that alpha is going to be in there, or make sure that beta is not in there.
And it's going to look for that exact thing. It's not going to wildcard it.
Exactly. So looking here for alpha plus beta, it is still wildcarding, but there's only 2 examples in this 5-example list where both alpha and beta exist. It's the 2 elements where we have flip-flopped them. We have alpha space beta and beta space alpha. But because the tool is being told you must have alpha, you must have beta, everything else is excluded. So it is power user things. These are not elements that you're necessarily going to be doing on the fly. You won't be sitting in Swagger saying, hey, I'm going to do some random searches. This is for fine-tuning very large queries that you have to run frequently, that you're going to script and make sure are running securely and properly on the fly every single time, or processes where you're trying to synchronize information from the REST API to another tool set and you're not utilizing some hub system.
I can see this being really useful.
Yep.
There's a lot of people trying to get exact information or exact ways that they've coded their items. So I see this being useful for just finding that information.
Exactly. And so what I really want to emphasize also, though, is, and this is maybe the last point before we go back to questions, I think some of them have been answered on the fly during during our presentation. But these are not the only Lucene query parameters that are out there. There's an entire database of them available. If you wanted to go out and search the Apache system and just take a look at those. But these are the most common. These are the ones that you'll want to pay most attention to. And that's pretty much it. So we are taking suggestions. We're taking both a suggestion where you say, I would like to see this, as well as I wrote this article that I think should be put into the community, from the community into the cookbook. Is there a place that people are putting them in the community right now?
Right now, just, putting in a support, sorry, it's early. Putting in, a question on support, just saying, hey, Chloe, this is something I'm working on with REST API. Interested in putting that in the cookbook would be the best way to communicate that.
Okay, perfect. And I want to make sure that people are aware that we definitely give attribution on where something came from. I have no difficulty with that, because I do appreciate the effort that people put into these things. But I do reserve the right to make edits on the language, ensuring that it's written with the exactly, make sure that it's got the right perspective for a large audience rather than a single person, etc. So don't want people to submit something and then be bothered that I make edits to it. So, but we definitely are making, I want to make it clear that this is open. It's a living document, and we will gladly accept any form of contribution. So.
Excellent. Yay. All right. Well, I think that's everything. Let me check, see if there's any questions. We answered a lot of the questions that I got previously as we were talking.
Great.
Let me just double check here. I don't see any other questions on the landing page, but as always, I will be monitoring this landing page. This video will be up pretty soon after this, and everyone can look at it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to have that question as a comment, or if you need in the support channel, just saying, hey, I have a question about the API Cookbook Community Deep Dive. All right. Thank you. Everyone have a good morning.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody.